You've most likely never seen this GPU before, despite it rocking some serious features that people like me, and probably like you, really value. Now no, just because you've never heard of the brand here on the fans doesn't mean it's a knockoff GPU, but rather this is an official Intel partner card that's rocking the cleanest white and silver design, and the performance it delivers is pretty incredible. And just in case you're skeptical, which you still should be at this point, we also brought in an actual Intel GPU of the same model to compare the legitimacy of this card. And as a little bonus, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you my full rundown of the state of using an Intel graphics card here in 2024. I know a lot of you have been asking me about that, but all after a quick word from today's sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by GVG Mall, and you probably already know that I've been using them for so long to activate Windows on a ton of my own builds. They're actually running a huge sale right now, which boosts my normal 18% discount up to 25% off if you use code ZTT18, and I'll have that linked at the top of the description. They not only have Windows keys, but also a ton of other stuff such as Office and even game keys for platforms like Steam, Origin, and Uplay, and they even have console stuff too like PSN and Xbox prepaid cards as well. Activating Windows is super simple and only takes like 3 minutes total, so activate Windows today and remove that nasty watermark, and don't forget to use ZTT18 for 25% off.
Okay, so before getting into the investigation and review process of this card, it's time for some actual transparency. Depending on what I say on a day-to-day basis, and especially depending on which of my YouTube shorts and TikToks just came out, people are always going to think that I'm biased towards one GPU company or another. If NVIDIA did something cool and I talk about it, then I'm an NVIDIA fanboy. And if I even mention the term FPS per dollar, I'm an AMD fanboy. But when it comes to true favoring and biases, I would gladly admit that if anything, I'm actually slightly biased towards Intel over both AMD and NVIDIA. As a PC hardware enthusiast, I want as much competition in this GPU space as possible, so yeah, I am rooting for Intel to do well with their GPUs right now. Intel Arc has made some crazy good progress in the last year, and it's continuing to get better and better. Once they become a true competitor to AMD and then NVIDIA, the people that will benefit the most from that are going to be us consumers and gamers. And I'm just a guy that happens to make videos about building aesthetic gaming PCs. I think you guys already know that I'm not the perfect, unbiased, journalistic type of video reviewer. Most of you that have been watching ZTT probably already knew all of this, so let's move on to the actual graphics card that we're reviewing today. So what we're looking at here is the Intel Arc A750, and specifically a model that I randomly found on AliExpress one day. And yes, I do mean random. I don't think there is a single English-speaking YouTube video about this graphics card, so I'm pretty sure that this video is going to be the first. This card is sold under a store called SZWXZY. But the brand that makes the card is Gunnir. The word Gunnir isn't even mentioned anywhere on this AliExpress page, so naturally I was super skeptical at first, and I had to try this out for myself. It turns out that after doing some digging, Gunnir is an actual legit GPU brand over in China, and they're actually officially partners with Intel to make this graphics card. The whole time I was waiting for this card to arrive, I definitely thought that this was just going to be another one of those knockoff AliExpress brands just repurposing old GPUs, but the first red flag, or green flag in this case, was the box. I mean, look at this thing. Compared to those knockoff boxes that we've been getting on AliExpress lately, this one seemed like the actual real deal. It's nicer than most of the AMD and NVIDIA boxes as well. It's also got all of the right branding, artwork, specs, and even the serial number sticker looks legit as well. When I opened up the box and picked up the GPU, I was also confused because this felt like a very real, sturdy, and heavy graphics card that came from a reputable company. So I'm not sure how common knowledge this is, but after doing a deep dive, it turns out that Gunnir is a very legit brand. It's just not here in the United States. Here's their webpage, and as you can see, this is just a Chinese-based graphics card company, and there's like nothing weird about this at all. I also found the specific product page of the A750 that we're looking at, and yeah, everything in here is exactly what you normally see. During this rabbit hole, I was searching all over for anything I could find about Gunnir, and there's multiple articles from places like Tech Power Up and WCCF Tech that explain about other Intel launches and how Gunnir is officially launching other cards like the A380. So basically, this is just a very real graphics card company that's fully legit. They just only sell their products over in China, which is why most of us have probably never heard of this brand before. It also makes sense why I found it on AliExpress. I did also search on eBay, and there's a couple models available for way more than I paid, and all of them say that the graphics card is coming from China as well. But speaking of the price, this is probably also why you haven't heard of this graphics card before, because it's kind of expensive. It's currently listed at $285, which is exactly what I paid for it about a month ago. So the good news is at least the price is pretty stable from what I've been seeing. The bad news is that if you're actually interested in an Intel Arc A750, you can find them for significantly cheaper, such as the Sparkle model, usually around $210, and the other models, including the Intel one, closer to $220 to $240. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm usually perfectly fine with paying a little bit of extra money for an all-white design. Aesthetics over everything. Unfortunately, at $285, that's a 36% increase over the 210 Sparkle card. So yeah, that is quite a price hike just for aesthetics. But obviously, aesthetics aren't the only factor we need to consider here.
You're going down a path I can't follow.
I was also obviously interested in the performance compared to the stock Intel A750. According to Tech PowerUp, which does actually have a dedicated page for this Gunnir model, it's also listed under retail boards based on this design on the stock Intel Arc A750 page. The only changes I found were the boost clock speed and the TDP. Compared to the Intel stock model, the Gunnir's boost clock was at 2200 megahertz while the stock was at 2050, and then the Gunnir also had a lower TDP of 210 watts compared to the normal 225. In theory, that means that this card should run cooler and faster compared to the stock Intel card, pretty much like all third-party manufacturer cards. So let's run a couple tests and see if that's legit. When using 3D Mark's Time Spy, we get a score of 12,230 with the stock A750 and 12,694 with the Gunnir model, which equates to a nice 3.8% increase. And when running a 10-minute stress test using Cinebench 2024, our Intel card peaked up to 76 degrees and our Gunnir card only got up to 63. That's actually pretty crazy. So yeah, this is just a better version of the original Intel Arc A750. So let's run some gaming benchmarks to see how viable this $285 GPU is here in 2024. We'll start with Cyberpunk 2077, and when using 1080p, we could easily crank up the settings too high, and we got 80 FPS, 1 FPS higher than the stock card, by the way. Considering that this is a pretty GPU demanding game to run, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. After that, we tested Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, and when using 1080p balance settings, here the numbers flip-flopped a bit, but again, we still got a very solid 93 to 95 average FPS. Hogwarts Legacy was up after that, and again, using 1080p and high settings, both of these cards got a solid FPS average of 74. Finally, we tested Assassin's Creed Mirage, and with 1080p high settings, we got 77 FPS with the Gunnir card and 72 FPS with the stock one. Here's what the rest of the benchmarks are looking like, and as you can see, other than Starfield, of course, this can certainly be classified as a 1080p high card, and it allows you to play literally any title that you want to without much of an issue.
And real quickly, this was the testing rig that we were using, and we don't need to go super deep on this, but we are rocking some new parts other than the Intel GPU that you may not have seen before. Performance-wise, we just have an Intel i5 12600KF, so that's a perfect pairing with any mid-range GPU right now. We have 32 gigabytes of Corsair Dominator Platinum DDR4, and we also have a nice Corsair MP600 Pro LPX 2TB drive in there, so we can hold all of our games. Thank you, Corsair, per usual. We also have to give a huge shout out to Antec because this case is their new NX416L, and this is an absolute beauty. This comes with two massive 160mm RGB fans in the front and a standard 120 in the back, and I really like this mesh combo up at the front and on the power supply basement. What's really unique though is that this panel here can not only hide two SSDs and keep the front of your build looking really nice and tidy like we did, but you can actually remove this panel, giving you access to mount an up to 240mm radiator as well. I've never seen a case give you the ability to mount the AIO there, but also allow you to completely hide that spot if you don't want to use it. If you're interested in checking out one of these NX416Ls, I'll have a link down in the description along with everything else inside our benchmarking testing rig.
But remember, just like I explained in last week's video, the benchmarking numbers don't paint the full story here, especially when you're talking about Intel GPUs. When we're testing super popular and modern games, we aren't going to really see an issue, but daily driving an Intel GPU is when you do start to see some downsides pop up. One of the specific issues we were dealing with is that the card refuses to go past a resolution of like 520p whenever it's plugged into a capture card on a different computer. We use a separate recording PC to record all of our benchmarking footage in every video. That way we never sacrifice performance for recording, and we just couldn't do that with this setup. This is the reason why you're watching camera footage of the monitor versus the actual gameplay clips like normal. And this isn't a fluke issue either, at least I don't think so. A couple of months ago, we reviewed a budget laptop that had an Intel-based integrated graphics setup in there, and we basically had the exact same problem in that video. For whatever reason, I'm pretty sure there's an issue with the Intel GPUs sending the signal through capture cards, and yes, we tested multiple capture cards, by the way. So yeah, that's a perfect example of the weird quirks that you'll experience with Intel right now. You'll also experience some oddities with the driver support of the older titles, and honestly, sometimes even the newer titles as well. I'm sure you've seen over the past year that Intel is continuously working on driver support for older games, and how there's always like a 70 to 100% increase in performance after they fix it. But if you're specifically trying to play an older title that's not supported by the Intel drivers yet, you may be in for a rough time. Same thing with the newer titles sometimes. As of late, Intel has been a bit behind to releasing their day one drivers of the popular game launches like Starfield, and if you're the type of gamer that really values playing the big games as soon as they come out, Intel is probably still not the play for you just yet. So who exactly do I think should be buying Intel GPUs right now? Enthusiasts like me. It's the type of people that consider PC building a hobby on its own, and not the people who just consider their gaming PC a tool just so they could play the PC games. Again, like I said earlier, Intel has made some serious progress in the GPU department over the past year, and I'm genuinely rooting for them to become a legit contender, but I just don't think it's mainstream, casual, gamer friendly just yet. Intel's second generation of graphics cards called Battlemage is coming in just a few months, and hopefully this gets them closer to being casual friendly, but we'll have to wait and see. Either way, this is a really dope graphics card that has a very clean white design to it. It's easily the best looking Intel Arc GPU right now, but at the end of the day, I still don't recommend it to the average gamer just yet. And if you want to see a video featuring a GPU that I do recommend to pretty much everyone else, then feel free to click the one that's on the screen now.